Let's paint a portrait of Jimin from BTS. In early 2022, I painted all of the BTS members for a bigger personal project. The portraits were all themed around their song Black Swan, which also meant that I made sure to use reference images from the song's music video. As you can probably tell, the process video is sped up quite a bit, and while I would love to paint an image like this in under 10 minutes, that's just not attainable. In total, this painting took me just under 11 hours to make, which happened over the course of several days while also juggling the 6 other portraits. I can also reveal that I painted a few unsuccessful portraits of Jimin prior to this, and while I'm not sharing their process, they really helped to set the style and colour palette for this project. I'm not gonna lie, I really struggled with capturing Jimin's likeness, and some of that was down to working in a more detailed style. But even early on, you can see that this doesn't quite match the reference image. Usually when this happens, it's because I'm not painting what I see, but what I think I see. That sounds really weird, but when you paint and draw, we sometimes rely on experience more than our eyes, and falsely so. So in our minds, we are totally and utterly convinced that it looks right, only to come back to it later and realise that it doesn't look right at all. Taking a break from the artwork and leaving it for a few days, or even focusing on something else for a while, can really help with this. And that helps us reset our minds and come back to the image with fresh eyes. This can also be partially forced by mirroring the canvas, which often helps highlight issues with placement and so on. When painting, I do tend to mirror my canvas and the reference images a lot. However, Procreate doesn't actually capture this in a time-lapse, so please trust that I spent plenty of time working with the image in this way as well. For this series of portraits, I also did something I haven't really done in the past. I created a new file where I copied my painting and overlaid it with the reference image. The aim of doing that wasn't to trace any aspect of the reference, but only to see where I was falling short, meaning I ended up using this new image as a reference to make amends, so I could see where things were off. While I was creating this series, I was still experimenting with brushes, and I landed on one that got more of a bristle-like texture. I also ended up wanting to work with a slightly broader colour palette compared to the portraits I've painted the past few years. These choices had a really big impact on the style of this series, meaning that I ended up leaning towards something more rendered. And it's fun to see how much my style may vary depending on the digital brushes and mediums I use, but also the size of my colour palette. In hindsight, I can also see that my quest for getting the likeness right has had the biggest impact on this, and was probably what led me down the route of this naturalistic style. Earlier I mentioned that I was working on this portrait alongside the portraits of the other 6 BTS members. With each portrait, the visual language of the series evolved as I found better ways of capturing likeness, but I also made stylistic choices involving shading, colour usage, and so on. Therefore, when I finished one portrait, I had to go back and change the other images as well, just to make sure that the series would have a cohesive look. So there was a lot of back and forth and tweaking and making sure that everything would look consistent. Thank you so much for watching. More process videos are up on my YouTube channel, and check out my social media accounts and my website for more of my work.